Hello and welcome to Traditional Stitches FlossTube video number 7. I'm Janice Spencer from Traditional Stitches and this is Rose Heck.
Hi Janice.
Rose.
How are
Rose, we'll get to that in a minute. Rose is the leader of our Facebook Stitch Along for the Morison sampler, which was our 20th anniversary exclusive from Hands Across the Sea samplers. And are we into the 5th month or the 6th month?
I don't actually know.
We started in December, so.
Yeah, while you're talking, I will take a quick peek. December, January, February, March, April, May. So we're in the 6th month.
Oh, wow. All right, well, and everybody's making excellent progress. We've definitely seen in the social media, and we're going to talk a little bit later about tackling the eyelet bands.
Yes.
But the first thing I want to talk about was you asked me how I was doing, and we've had a little bit of a rough month in the shop in April. I'm very glad to see the beginning of May and hope it brings a better month. Right after Easter, one of our employees got COVID, the variant, and ended up in hospital in ICU and on a ventilator. So that was really scary for her. And the good news there is she's home and she's recovering. It might be a bit of a long road, but yeah, at least we can say that. But in amongst that, we're all isolating and getting tested and getting the shop deep clean, sterilized, and all the kinds of things that go along with that. And then we just thought we were coming out of the COVID thing. And in the same weekend, 2 of my ladies lost close family members. So it's been an emotionally hard and challenging month in our shop, to be sure. But when it comes down to just the business of being in business, we lost well over 200 staff hours in the shop this month. Order processing, packing, receiving product, 200 hours at a time when we couldn't really afford to lose any. So what I'd like to say about that is that especially to the people who are waiting for our Blackbird anniversary sampler, the What Remains Is Love sampler, we are shipping the 2nd batch of orders and we're actually ahead. We were going to start that on the first part of May, but we actually got going about 10 days ago. So thankfully we're in a good position there. But what we're finding is that people in their enthusiasm for this sampler didn't really necessarily read all of the information about how we're going to manage shipping on this. So we get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails saying, I ordered this, why isn't it coming? So I'm endeavoring to keep our website up to date about where we are in our workflow, and I'm going to include that link below in the description box. But what I really want to ask people is use the website to check the status of your order. Please don't email us and please don't call us. We're trying to reserve our phone lines for things that can't be handled by email, such as credit card number changes and that kind of thing. But please just be patient, have some faith. Know we're working really, really hard, and we really appreciate your support.
Good points. I was just, while you were talking, I was thinking 200 hours, 40 hours a week. That's 5 lost weeks of employment, of work. That's a lot of time. And hard to get back, but it sounds like you guys are just working your tailbones off. So, hats off to you guys.
Well, thanks, Rose. And we haven't really told people this before, so I'm going to let this cat out of the bag. But you worked in our shop for a couple of years.
I did.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to work in a place and think that they're going to stitch, don't. There was no stitching. There was a lot of eye candy. I remember that. And there was many times there was this little voice in my head that says, Rose, get with the program. You cannot look. But every once in a while we did. But yeah, those are fun. Those are fun. So kind of miss that, but my husband doesn't miss the loss of funds because I don't think I brought a paycheck home ever. So.
Well, it does mean that you know that my team in the shop very well, and the resilience and bravery and the teamwork and the support of each other that they've shown in this last month just makes me super proud.
You guys are one close-knit family, and you have to be, especially through all of this COVID. So
yeah. So, well, thanks for listening to me talk. It's been a stressful month, but I'm really, really looking forward to moving ahead and moving along. And I'm thankful that everybody is on board with us for that. So, okay, so the Blackbird sampler, everybody enjoyed the Blackbird stitch along weekend that Brenda and Laura, the serial starter, shared in the social media this weekend. So much so that we have been inundated again with orders for our Blackbird anniversary sampler.
Crazy.
Yeah, so here's the chart for it. And over my shoulder on the wall, I've got the framed version, which is on the 40 count linen with the hand-dyed cotton thread. And then propped up behind me is the 36 count linen with the hand-dyed silk thread. Yeah.
Okay, so the one that's framed is yours.
No.
And the one that is not framed is Kathleen's.
Right, and Kathleen's my office manager in the shop. She's been with me for coming on 8 years now, so we're a pretty good team, the two of us. Sometimes we say that it's a good thing that we can share a brain, because otherwise we'd be in trouble.
And for those that don't know, when I did work at the stitching store, I was upstairs working alongside Janice and Kathleen, and I had my own thing to do, and those two had to work together as office manager and owner. And it was the back and forth bantering was a lot of fun. Sometimes it was serious, sometimes it was, poke it fun. And I could just sit and chuckle, I guess. So these two get along really well. They seem to read each other's minds. So
sometimes it seems like that. So we're going to have to get Kathleen on as a guest in maybe even our next FlossTube video, and everybody can meet her and see what we're talking about.
That'd be good.
Oh. So in our last video, I had said that this month we were going to announce the release of our next Hands Across the Sea Traditional Stitches exclusive sampler. And with the month that has been, we're not ready for it. And we can't do it the justice and the proper launch that it deserves. So we're going to put that off for a little while. It might be next month, but it's probably going to be a little bit later than that. But I will, maybe I'll insert just a little sneak peek in the video here, just a little corner shot, just as a tempting tidbit.
That would be a good idea.
Okay. And then on Nicola's FlossTube video this past weekend, she also talked about the Jane Fittis Stitch Along that we did last year. The Facebook group for that was co-sponsored by Addock Needleworks and Needle and Haystack and us at Traditional Stitches. And so Nicola showed the sampler that is going to be the subsequent sampler for that Facebook group, with the three of us sponsoring it. And she did say that the charts are going to be available in a few weeks, but it could well be fall before we can see the linen and the silk threads for that. So I'm going to insert a photo of it here. And also we have posted on the website, just because we're getting so many inquiries for it, but everything is to be determined. And definitely look for the stitch along and the supplies for that not to really be available until into the fall. But it's beautiful.
I bet. Anything she puts out. That's exciting. And that's going to be a lot of stitching. I think there is time for sleep.
No, overrated, highly overrated.
That's okay.
Yeah, so this month's section of the Anne Morison sampler, we are all about the eyelets. And so I have my chart here. So we're jumping into this alphabet band here, and then this red dividing band here, and all of the stitches in those are eyelets. And a lot of the people who have finished the Anne Morison sampler have zipped through this section and done beautiful work. And, but there are some people that are working along with our pace and are a little bit worried about the eyelets. So I thought we'd talk about them a little bit here. And then at the very end of this video, I shot a video yesterday of me starting my eyelet bands on my sampler. And it's about 6 minutes long, and there's a little bit of information in there and a little bit of technique. So if you're interested or curious about eyelets, then just stick around and see that at the end of the video.
Good. That'll be good.
Yeah. So on my sampler, I jumped ahead and I started on the red dividing band instead of doing the alphabet letters. And Nicola in her FlossTube video this weekend had done a few of the letters, but she also did the red dividing band and showed her method of traveling from one side of the sampler to the other side and then back in a way that you don't have to worry about carrying your threads or your tension on your eyelet. And I tried it and it works and it is fast. So. Good. Yeah, so Nicola was kind enough to share some photos of her process with me. So I'm going to insert them here. And then also I'll link to Nicola's video in the description box below so that you can hear her talking about it in her words as well.
Good. There was a question regarding how to travel across that. And I didn't have an answer for the person at that time because I actually wanted to try it for myself and I just didn't get to that point. So I'm glad that she addressed it. And so for anybody that is on the Facebook group and is wondering, please check this and it should answer all your questions, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there has been a lot of discussion in our Facebook group about eyelets. So my recommendation is to go back through that discussion in our Facebook group, set aside some time, cup of tea, and just read through that. If you're not in our Facebook group, we are still letting people in, even if they haven't purchased the sampler. So you're welcome to join and check that out. The other thing is that one of our members, Angela, and her husband did spend a lot of time mapping out travel routes, and those images are all available, but only in the Facebook group. I don't have the rights to share those, and they did a lot of work for them. And so if you're not on Facebook, then I'm afraid that's not something you're going to have access to. But if you are in our Facebook group, definitely dig them out. They're worth looking at. Correct.
And I took all of those pictures that Angela had put on and I put it in the announcements. It was the only place I could seem to access to put them in. I believe I did put them in announcements. Either that, or I put them in maybe 2 places. I did an album. That's what it is. And it's called Eyelet Stitch Letters.
Excellent.
And they're all in there so people can access them. So for any resources, I try to do different albums for people to see. If you can't find some of them, just type in Angela's name or Eyelet in the search bar, and these things should come up. And people have asked also about anything that Nicola has put on. Just type in her name, and you should find the different resources. So people have asked, and that's how you find them.
Right.
So
Great. That's good to know. So the one other thing that I did want to point out about the chart in the eyelet band is that underneath or sometimes over top of each letter is some black typeface numbers, and that is to indicate what color of thread of the 3 different conversions that are provided you're to stitch that letter in.
correct, yeah. I think the first time I ever come across that in Nicola's charts, I wasn't sure. So for anybody that does come across that, it's a learning process, but that's how Nicola lets people know what color it is. So,
well, then you've got the information right all on that page instead of
Right.
having to flip back and look through text.
right.
The other thing that I want to say about the chart is that the stitch diagram for the eyelet in the booklet shows a 8-leg eyelet, but Anne's sampler actually uses a 16-leg eyelet. So that is a little bit more challenging if you're working on Ada, because you do have to split stitch to get up and do those in between legs. But we had talked about Algerian eyelets a couple of months ago in a video, and you had provided some photos of the steps and examples of doing it on different fabrics, and also some alternate stitches that you could use in the space. So I will put those in this video as well so that people can screenshot them if they like. And oh, the other thing, I almost forgot, this is important. So when I was preparing my notes for this video, I sent Nicola a message to say, can you take a close-up picture of the eyelets from the Anne Morison original sampler, just so people have something to know what they're shooting for. Anne's eyelets were wonky and crazy and uneven, and so I'm going to insert a couple of pictures here, and this should make everybody feel much, much better about their eyelets. But
Yes.
beautiful and charming all at the same time.
Yes, and I think that's what we miss. We're looking so much for perfection. We miss charming. So I don't mind charming, you know. So when people show a picture and they say, is it good enough? It's like, yeah, it looks great. So, you know, kind of take it down a notch.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
The other thing that Nicola did was sent me a photo of a sampler in her collection, a close-up of a sampler that is very, very similar to the Anne Morison sampler. And I think we saw it in that video where Nicola did show us the original Anne Morison sampler. But the girl of this other sampler, instead of doing eyelets, she just did blocks of 4 cross stitches. And in some cases, just to differentiate them a little bit more, she actually backstitched around those blocks of 4 cross stitches. So I'll insert that picture here so that everybody can see what I mean.
So lots of resources, lots of way of doing the eyelet. So for those that are panicking, don't despair. There's alternatives that you can do. And it looks like little girls, they did the alternatives, whether they couldn't get how to do 1 stitch or they were, I don't want to use the word lazy, But when you're maybe 8, 10, you would rather be playing outside than stitching perhaps. So they did something different, and that's okay. We're all originals. We don't have to copy if we don't want to.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with putting your personal mark on it.
No, not at all.
So anything else you would like to say about Eyelet?
No, other than I was doing something on another piece and it had eyelets, and I had purchased an awl from you a couple weeks ago. So I thought, let's just see what this does. And it was amazing. Now I'm not 100% sure if after I do the eyelet that I use the awl just to make the whole round or widen it or whatever, but it made them all really nice and even. So I'm sold on the awl. So it'll come out when I tackle the eyelets in a day or two. And I haven't started yet. I've had other things to do, and the awl will be beside me. So,
well, you got the first one and your pick of colors out of a fresh batch of awls that came from local on Vancouver Island artisan that turns these items for us. So I will link to them below. They're definitely beautiful and lovely to have.
Yeah, they're very tactile, you know, with wood, and they're very nice. If anybody likes wood and wood structures, these are just really nice to have. So.
Yeah. All right, so I'm just trying to think about the other things that I wanted to talk about. How about what you're working on, Rose?
Oh gosh, what am I not working on? I'm looking around because I have a pile here, I have a pile here, and I have a pile here. What do you want to see?
Well, let's start with Blackbird.
Okay.
Since it was the Blackbird weekend.
Okay. So I actually started on Friday because my husband and I went camping out west, and I know, and we had good weather except for the 3 inches of snow on Saturday afternoon. So yeah, it was a little unnerving, but it was okay. We were going to make a snowman outside, but if you know the area we're in, there's a lot of wild horses, and horses, there's one good thing that they do a lot of. So, and it's not eat.
Manure?
So, exactly. So we thought it would be more like poopman than snowman. So we decided not to.
That's
but
quite a vision.
I'm not really set up for a good lighting. I have a couple of ideas, so I didn't bring it. So I started on Friday. So this is my start. If you can see, I'll just hold something back. So that's just my start.
Well, that's a great start.
Yeah. So just for anybody that's working on it, just remember that there is a little bit of counting difference on the borders of 3 sides, and it's not, you can't start it and then memorize it. So keep track of that. So I started that on Friday. I actually started 3 smalls out there. I won't show, but I like working on smalls that I don't need magnifying. So, and Janice knows what my eyes are like, so she's probably thinking, you don't need magnifying? That's amazing. But I can get away with it. And what else? I should show, well, I don't know if I should show you that. Maybe I'll leave that.
Oh, you're a tease.
Well, I guess I can, because this is not going out into the world. I did finish my granddaughter's birth sampler this morning. And so, and because not everybody sees this, I do, for privacy, I do kind of block it out on Instagram, but this isn't going out into the world. But this is what it is.
Oh.
And I changed it because it was in blue. So that was my finish for today. That's
gorgeous. So that is, if I remember, because we special ordered that in for you. That's a Stony Creek chart.
Right.
That's what it's called?
Grace and Love birth sampler.
Okay.
So it's it has specialty stitches, which is my jam. And it's done mostly in DMC with a little bit of hand-dyed threads. And it's not bad to stitch at all. It was actually quite enjoyable. So what else? Oh, I guess now that I'm finished that, I'm gonna actually, I don't know if I can do this. No, that's not gonna work. So I've got two pieces I'm gonna work, and you know what this is.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thread of connection.
Yeah.
From Amy Mitten.
Yep.
And for anybody that has ordered the silk threads for the Blackbird designs, it's the same silk floss, and they work like butter. Like, they are so nice. I don't know why I don't have everything kitted up in Amy's silks. So
a bit of background on that project that you're working on. When Amy started designing, I think she's a couple years ahead of us. So she's probably 22 years ago, she started producing her kits. And sorry, Amy, this is going to really start something. The first one was called The Garden Plot Thickens. And she taught it at a local shop before our shop was open. And Amy wrote mystery stories that went along with the samplers. So the symbolism of what was going on in the sampler at that time is kind of played out in the sampler. So if somebody was getting their heart broken, there would be a band of broken hearts and that kind of thing. So that's how it all started. And the thread of connection one that you showed is, the theme is the Battle of Culloden in Scotland. And so there is a story that goes along with it, and I'm not going to give any details about it because it's not maybe what you think it might be. But so those kits are available. Some of them are on our website and some of them you have to order directly from Amy, but we'll link to those below as well because they're just so much fun. And I know I've said this before, but Amy's samplers are definitely the ones that we have the most shop models of in our shop because I've stitched them and I enjoy them so much.
Yeah. It isn't only about her silks, it's all about the stories that are attached to them. This was a class I had taken and you were there also. And it was 3 days of constant stories. And I just took it all in. It was so amazing. So this had languished for about 3 years. And I said, this is the year I'm going to complete it. So, and then I have another hats to my right here that I'm between the two of them. I'll probably work back and forth.
And which one is that kit?
Oh, Susanna Milne. I'm sorry. Excuse me. This is Susanna Milne, and it is scrolled down. Her colors are mainly green, white, gold, and I actually love this. I think it's a lark.
Oh yeah.
And I know when I had kitted it up and then I looked at it and I went, oh, I'm not so sure I want to stitch this white, yellow, and green type of thing. But as I've stitched it, it's so pretty. You just can't go wrong with a hat sampler. So I've enjoyed this one also. So I really don't have anything I don't enjoy. So, and that's good enough. What are you stitching on?
Well, so when we were quarantining, when we thought that we had a COVID exposure, and I should just backtrack a little bit. When we were talking to Alberta Health Services about the COVID situation, we determined that she hadn't actually been working while she was contagious. She had been working while she was exposed, but it turned out that her days off and when the period that she was contagious were outside of the shop. So once we figured that out, but we had a few days where we didn't actually know that. So I was quarantined in my house and isolated in my house. And guess where I had to stay? In here. Not half
Aww.
bad, right? Except for that, I brought home a big box of accounting. So instead of being able to stitch or play with my stash, I was sorting paperwork and getting ready for the other thing that happened this month, which was tax season.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I didn't get much stitching done, but I did get some stitching done.
Good.
And so I clipped it to the back of this just for display purposes. So again, this is Kathleen's 36 count with Amy's hand-dyed silk thread. But I started on the Sarah Jackson sampler from Scarlett House. So this is done on dolphin hand-dyed linen from Week Style Works. And it's mostly cross stitch, but there is going to be some cross stitch over one verse in the middle here. So I was sympathizing with the people who aren't really fans of eyelets when I was trying to do my cross stitch over one, because it is not my thing. But I'll show you the full picture of the sampler here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So stitching on the dark linen is, I kind of like it. And then the Scarlett House just in the last 10 days or so released 3 more samplers. And one of them is stitched on Aztec red linen. And that is speaking to me too. So there might be a theme here.
Question, is Sarah Jackson a reproduction?
Yes, I would say so.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
fun.
very pretty.
Enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit smushy because I tend to stitch those kinds of samplers in hand instead of having them on my frame.
That brings me to another question. Do you do your over one in hand?
I am going to have to not. I tried to do some of the letters on that sampler. So the Week Style Works Dolphin is only available in the old base of the Week Style Works linen, which in the higher counts tends to be a little bit less stable. Maybe the threads move around a little bit more than a Zweigart linen would. So, but the Dolphin's not available in the Zweigart base. Okay. So this is on the old base. So I found that the linen threads were not really standing up great to the cross stitch over one in hand. So when I get to that part, I am going to put it in a hoop and stitch it that way. I think I'll be much happier and enjoy the process much more.
I think you will. I've tried in hand over one, and I mean, there are ways of keeping the integrity of the over one, but I just don't like the feel or the look. I'm not sure what it is. Some people can do it in hand over one. I'm not one of them. So
I did learn something when I was doing the 2 little letters that are over one here. I don't know if I can get in close enough, and it's the dark linen, so they're hard to see.
Yeah, I can see it.
But what I actually did with those ones was I was playing with the idea of just doing tent stitch, but tent stitch for letters sometimes isn't definitive enough. So I actually did them in tent stitch. So I did a half stitch on one journey and then I crossed them all coming back, which uses up a whole lot more thread and it doesn't let the variegation of the thread show. But I was a little bit happier with my cross stitch over one doing it that way. So something to play with.
Right.
But that's the extent of my stitching this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, it's progress.
Yeah. So in the next month, we're going to complete the second batch of shipping of the Blackbird Designs sampler. It'll take us maybe another 2 weeks. The gal who is out with COVID is out for a few more weeks recovering. Okay. So we're still going to be short-staffed going into the next couple of months. And it's just not really a time when anybody's really all that comfortable bringing new people in. So it's just going to be what it's going to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for people that are watching here in Alberta, numbers have gone very high. We're not in a good way in Alberta with COVID numbers. And So you just need to, be a little more patient.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're certainly doing the best that we can and working very, very hard. The good news is that almost all of us have had our first shot now, including me.
Oh, good.
So yeah, we're feeling a big relief that that part of the process is on its way. And yeah, that's more than enough news for me.
Yeah. So, good.
Yeah, so I will insert some pictures and the video of me doing eyelets here in the video, and then we will see you in a month's time.
Sounds good. We'll see you then.
Take care, Rose.
You too, Janice.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to a Sunday morning of stitching with Anne Morison. I am just about to embark on some eyelets, so I thought I would share that process with you. The first thing though is that in trying to get my setup going here, I've unpicked an eyelet. So I wanted to show you a little trick that I use. I have started with the dark red thread. I'm going to do the eyelet band that goes all the way across the sampler first, because I think it's going to show up a little bit better for our purposes here. But I had to unpick one, so there's a little bit of fiber left in my sampler that I want to get rid of before I actually get started. So, good old Scotch tape, just a little piece. I'm just going to tap it. So it picks up the fiber, and I'll just make sure that I do it front and back just to be thorough. Most threads will leave a little bit of fiber behind, but I know with this darker red one it is a little bit more noticeable, so I want to make sure to do that. Alrighty, so the thing that I learned the first couple times I tried to do this was that I can't do it without my magnifier, so I'm trying this new setup and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be stitching this with my number 28 tapestry needle as opposed to my beading needle, and I just don't want to be splitting the threads that go down the middle of the eyelet, so I'm going to just use the needle with the bigger tip. I'm also going to start with an away waist knot. I'm going to give myself plenty of tail because I'm going to have to weave it in afterwards, and I don't want that to be a wrestling match. So I'm going to park that well off to the side margin, give myself probably 3 inches of tail there. And I know from my previous experiments where I want to be. If you're going to do this too, though, you need to count down really carefully because unpicking eyelets is not a lot of fun. So you want to make sure that you're starting in the right spot. If I wasn't filming, I would be sure to do my A first, so that when I started this dark red band, I knew I was going to be in exactly the right position. So all of the stitches of the eyelet go from the outside into the center hole. If I hadn't already been in there, I would waggle the needle a little bit to just make the hole a little bit bigger. I think that the most important part as you're working this stitch is tension and being consistent and even with your tension. So that's why we always say practice on another piece of fabric, or it's even better if you can do it in the margins of the sampler that you're working on, because then you know how your stitch is going to behave on exactly the linen that you're working on with exactly the thread that you're working with. Always keep in mind that how you see your stitch through your magnifier is not how it's going to look when you look at it with your eye.
I'm doing two-handed stitches in here on my frame. I have my right hand underneath. I am right-handed, and I just feel that my right hand knows a bit better of what it's doing, and I keep my left hand on top where I can keep an eye on it. These stitches that I've put in on the border, it's a little bit trickier because they're a little bit more crowded with thread, so just take your time to get it in the right spot. There definitely is no rushing with eyelets. They don't go nearly as fast as cross stitch does, and it's worth taking the time to make them as nice as you would like them to be as you go along, and just relax and enjoy. So there is one eyelet done, and I'll take a close-up picture of that guy and insert him in the video. And then what I'm going to show you here is moving around to start the next one. So the next eyelet is, this would be my starting point here, but I'm not going to carry my thread across the open eye of the stitch. So now I need to go to the back of my work and just chart my pathway to get to where I want to start the next stitch. So I'm going to make sure that this stitch pulls in the correct direction to keep the central hole more open. Tuck in the back of those stitches. Pull it in the direction I want it to go. And then another tack along the back. And then my needle will come up here. So eyelets are definitely a little bit more fiddly and time consuming than cross stitch is, but the effect is well worth it. And I'll show a little bit more detail next.